Well, welcome, like I said, to our second installment on AI search. This week, we are focused all about content and the future of blogs. And it was very fitting for me to invite Ethan, who is the CEO of Graphite, to join us to go a little bit deeper on the content side of AI search. I've been a big fan of Graphite for a while. Was first introduced to them when one of our clients was using the tool and Composely, probably gosh, about like 18 months ago, and was able to connect with their team. And it's just always so fun when you meet someone that shares the same philosophy on quality and how to approach SEO. And so we've kind of been friendlies for a while, and this webinar felt like a good chance to kind of get to partner together. So Ethan, thank you so much for joining, and really excited to hear your take today.
Thank you for having me. Excited to chat.
Absolutely. Just a few housekeeping items that I always like to go through. So everyone in the audience is on mute, but please use the Q&A feature as well as the chat. I will be doing my best to keep an eye on both, but highly encourage questions throughout. We also are recording the webinar, so feel free to take notes, but we will send a recording. So keep an eye on your inbox for tomorrow. And then Ethan is seemingly in an office. I am working from home since we are remote. But if there are any technical issues, just know that we will work to troubleshoot those and we'll be back shortly. But with that, Ethan, I love to start, it's the classic, if I had a dollar for every time someone said SEO is dead or the blog is dead, we'd all be very rich and could probably retire at this point. But that's just not really the reality. Things evolve, things change, but I'd love to just start to set a baseline for everyone on like what your thoughts are for AI search. How is that different or the same compared to classic SEO as we know? Like, what are some opportunities you see with it, and where do you think some things might still be similar as it sits today? Again, you have full permission to say that could change next week as new algorithms and things shift.
Great. Yep. So let's break that out into a few things. First, is SEO dead or dying or going down? In other words, is the traffic going down? And I haven't seen the traffic go down, nor do I think it's going down. And the premise of this is that either people are using Google less or Google is displacing more and more of the above fold. And I can show you a quick chart.
Please.
So we did a study where we looked at the screen real estate for how much of Google is either
Mm.
Google owned or ads, and green is organic. So green would be SEO, and then ads would be red, and blue would be zero click. And it's true that a lot of the above fold is not organic, but that's been true for a long time. So
Yes.
this is a recent study, but I did this multiple years ago, even before ChatGPT, and this has been true for over 10 years, where Google has taken a lot of the clicks. So the screen real estate for organic has not changed at all that I've seen, or if it has, it's changed 10% or 5%. It hasn't changed 80% or anything like that. Then the second thing is, are people using Google less? I see no evidence that that's true. We have over 40 clients. We're not seeing anything like that across any of them. And what will happen is every couple of years there will be a new surface like TikTok search, Instagram search, YouTube search, Amazon search. Each time the some people will claim that new thing will displace Google, and I have not seen that happen. I see the claims every 2 years, but I haven't seen it actually happen. But what is happening is those surfaces are actually being used. People are actually searching on TikTok, Instagram, Amazon, YouTube. However, they're still searching on Google. So Google's slice of the pie is roughly similar. The pie is just getting larger with all these new services. So
Mm.
LLMs, people are using them as well, but Google's slice of the pie is not going down. It's just the pie is getting larger. A new slice is being added, and so then you want to optimize across all these different channels. I'll pause, but happy to get into your question about what's new and what's different. But I'll pause if you have any questions on that.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. Where did that study that you showed us from, like, can you just share a little bit of the background on kind of where that data comes from?
Yes, we have not published yet, but we will. But we took a random sample, random weighted sample across 10 categories, 2,200 different keywords.
Mm.
And we did another interesting thing is that when you are logged in and a real person, you'll see ads far more often than if you do automated scraping. And it's actually a pretty large difference. So we had actual
Nice.
people putting in searches, logged in, and looking at what was there. But yeah, so it was a weighted random sample across 2,200 different keywords, 10 different categories. And interestingly, Bing is actually even more egregious.
Yeah, that is really interesting. So if, what I have said too is I think certain sectors are potentially using an LLM search first mindset, and especially also as you think about the like adaptability curve of your early adopters, your innovators, they may be using AI search more than Google. But I don't think we're not where we are currently. I don't think that that's the majority of folks. And I think it really does depend on the industry and your buyer, kind of where they fall, but that Google still it's still the predominant search. And I think when someone wants to gut check ChatGPT or Perplexity and they're trying to maybe source verify, Google's probably where they're going to verify what they're getting out of these LLM searches.
Your guess is also my guess. I don't know, but my guess is that. And anecdotally, when people have said, I use ChatGPT for all of my searches, then I say, well, when have you used Google last? And they say today. So I think that Google is sort of it's not something that you think about actively using. So it's not top of mind, whereas ChatGPT is top of mind. I think Google is just sort of naturally a part of your daily habits, and so you don't realize it. But yeah, what I've found is that people in San Francisco and tech people are early adopters and
Yeah,
engineers, and other people are maybe not. But I would say even other people are using it more and more. But yeah, I've never spoken to anyone who's actually replaced all their searches. It's just that
completely.
it's not top of mind.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting, and I think that will shift. And if you've heard me on podcasts or if you've been on webinars with us previously, it's the if you leave and stop doing what's been working or you kind of ignore your current organic best practices and workflow, you will be leaving leads, share of voice on the table. But that may not be where we are a year from now. And so it's what can we start doing or what should we start learning and optimizing towards so that you continue to own the foundation and kind of protect your organic presence today while preparing for whatever shifts will come in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, etc.
I agree.
Fantastic. So tell us, with that, what are some of the early things you're seeing that you think still hold true as you think about optimizing for LLMs and AI search versus the things that you think might be slightly different?
I'll start with the things that are different. So the things that are different, it's much of it's the same. However, the things that are different are two things. First is that the tail is much larger in chat than it is in search. So the many, according to people from ChatGPT and Perplexity, sort of, not official, but they have said that the tail is huge. That many of the questions they've never seen before. I think for Google, it's 20% of the searches they've never seen before, but for chat, it's over 50% that they've never seen before. So the tail is essentially much larger.
Hmm.
This is a visualization of that, and we don't actually know exactly what's being asked, but we think that many of the questions are very specific questions and follow-up questions, like what's the best tool for X, and then which of them have this, which of them have that. Here's a quick example that I pulled up. So what's the best payroll management software, and then which of them have, whoops, yeah, this one. Well, which of them have all of these features and attributes? So anecdotally, this is what I hear people saying is that they're doing all this follow-on research, start at the head, and then get more and more specific. So I think it's probably something like that. And that is not true for Google search. So the
Just a
tail is
completely
much larger.
different way. I mean, it is conversational versus in Google, you might say, okay, well, now I need to go change my initial question, but it's still trying to speak Google versus
Yes.
here is that conversation. So you're just being naturally curious
Yes.
with the
It's
prompts.
conversational and it has context. And anecdotally, it seems like the answers are more personalized than Google's searches are personalized. Google searches are actually not that personalized, but the answers, if you're re-asking the same question, are. And I expect that it'll become much more personalized, and it's specifically designed to do that. So essentially, the tail is much larger,
Mhm.
and many questions have never been answered. So this is an interesting opportunity where much of Google is very competitive for especially for an early stage B2B company. If you're just launching, my advice is just don't do any SEO at all or do almost none because it's so competitive. However, that's not true for chat. So there's you can rank much faster in chat. There's two different ways. The first way is this, which is answering tail questions that have not been answered. And then the second thing that's different is earned answer engine optimization. So getting mentioned by others. And if you look at this example here, so what's the best payroll software? And you look here, whoops, this one here. This is what's the best payroll software. And let's see, Gusto is number one because it's been mentioned 12 times here, 13, 16, 18. So it's because so many people are mentioning it. And even if Gusto was ranked number one here, that's only one mention. And this is summarizing many opinions. And so for Gusto to win here, it's not a traditional I want my page ranking number one. It's I want everybody else mentioning me.
Right.
So
It's
earned,
reputation management.
yes. And the other thing is that you can change this quickly. So if these people, let's say that, several of these people look like they're affiliates, like you could probably pay Capterra and people managing people.com, Forbes, like you could probably pay them as an affiliate and you could very quickly become the answer. That's not true for SEO, where you could just suddenly be a brand new B2B company and start ranking, but you could here. The timeline to impact is faster and smaller new entrants also can be in the consideration set, which is not true
Hmm.
for traditional Google.
Well, and I think it comes to what we've seen for a while is with SEO, it was always you have to build that 101 level content first. So even if your buyers don't need it, you have to establish why you're the authority on what is a payroll software. And then you slowly kind of get into that longer tail, more contextual based content. And here it feels like the shift is, I mean, my recommendation would be use call recordings, be listening to client calls, be listening to sales calls, use the transcripts to say what are clients asking on these sales calls and turn that into content that likely will give you insight into what people are actually asking in a conversational tool.
Yes, and I can act, and that will help you know what the tail looks like. Because again, we don't have a true set of the tail, but that will tell you what the tail looks like probably. And I'll just show you an example here. So I said, which of the payroll software has HR, IT, and people analytics? And you'll see here that a URL on Rippling has this, and they say 20 features. It's like, here's all of the features. And this could definitely be informed by looking at your customer support, your sales calls, summarizing all of the questions that have been asked about, well, can you do this thing? And then you
Mhm.
create a giant page saying, these are all the things that I can do.
Well, and I think this is an important piece for people. And if you're on the call as a marketer trying to figure out how to justify why you should maintain a blog or why you should maintain focusing on your organic presence, is that that was sourced from a branded article. And while, yes, I think everyone is saying earned media reputation management is going to be a larger leg of the stool, if you will, in the new era of AI, it still feels like there's a place for branded content because that's ultimately what got Rippling to be answered in that prompt was their own really well written, thoughtful piece about it.
I agree with that. And the only thing, my personal opinion that I would differ is I actually think that the mid and long tail is much larger than the head. And if true, then
Mm.
actually your site is the primary vehicle to be ranking versus owned. I think that, or sorry, versus earned. I think earned and citations is for the head. We don't actually know the difference between the size of the head versus mid and tail, but what I would guess would be that this is actually much larger mid and tail. Therefore, your site is actually the number one vehicle, and secondary vehicle would be earned. But we don't know. That's my opinion.
Well, so this actually goes well to my next question, which is, okay, we you've kind of done a great job of uh, helping us adjust to the new landscape. But does the type of content we need to be creating shift? And I feel like you just kind of went there to say, yeah, a little bit. But outside of that owned and earned and focusing more on the longer tail keywords, how else should we be thinking about shifting content strategy?
I think that here's what I think. I think that many of the questions are Can you do this? Use cases. Do you have these features? Do you have these attributes,
Mhm.
region, languages? It's a lot of stuff about how do your products work and does your product fulfill my intent? So probably you want to do more of that. It's probably less of glossary terms. What's the definition of a word? Very, very low intent stuff, which you probably shouldn't have been doing in the first place because the intent is so low. But it's probably less stuff where there's no product present at all and it's impossible to win it in the first place because there's not a product
Mhm.
mentioned. And it's probably more tail content.
Now, how does that shift, in your opinion, the classic thought of structure of like a pillar page? And then you have all these spokes that in theory would be those longer tail keywords. Do you still need that baseline pillar page for interlinking and all of that? Or is it more important just to have the right spokes on the on site and have those questions being answered?
My analysis says that you never needed a pillar page and you never needed any organization at all. All you need to do is to create pages that target the terms that you want, and the structure is irrelevant. And I've actually tested this where Masterclass is a good example. For the first 18 months, we had no organization and no pillar page at all. And we were essentially randomly linking from across all the different articles, and
But
everything
you
was
were
fine.
still linking. There's still,
We were, yes, you definitely need
okay,
links. Links are very
okay.
important, but the organization is not important. So we were sort of disorganized. I mean, intentionally had a lack of structure to spread many, many links across the whole blog. And then we added categories and pillar pages and homepage, and there was no effect. So linking is very important, but the organization is actually not important. For users, it's useful and a good idea. But if we're just talking about search algorithms, they don't care about organization.
So it's finding that balance between the bots and feeding that into it, and then also the user experience. And if you are able to get someone on your page, how do you help them follow the path and the journey that you want them to take?
Yes.
So would you say that the interlinking strategy is then prioritized more on the user experience and less on trying to educate bots through a categorizational system?
I don't think that there's a I don't think that there's a real trade-off. I don't think that what's the effort of having organization and lack of organization? I don't really think it's that high. Personally, I'll show you a quick example here. So these are the links that I was referring to with Masterclass. This is scrambled eggs, and you'll see almond flour, honeycomb. Okay, it looks like they actually are categorized. Let's see here. Social criticism, not relevant. So essentially, Claude Debussy's Guide to Life and Music. I mean, it's not like noise, but we're intentionally spreading the links here. But then we do have categorized. I believe we have categorized. Yeah, let me see here. Do we have categorized? Maybe our food courses. So what we usually do is we'll have two different things. We'll have faceted links, categorization tags, and then we'll have spread links. And I don't think that there's a conflict between the two. I recommend both.
Well, and Miles just said, I guess what you're saying is that organization has a UX CTA value versus the classic link juice
Yes.
argument. And I think I even see that in there is the visual CTAs are a little more relevant because it's all
Yes.
categorized by food, but you still have some other articles that maybe are could
Yes.
like you said, it's not noise, but it's not one it's not only about food. Someone might have an interest in music and literature and so can hop over.
Yes. Yeah, and for B2B, when you decide to convert for a B2B product, it's probably 50 touch points, 100 touch points. And each touch point needs to build on itself so that
Mhm.
when you eventually are ready to convert, you convert with that particular company. And the more that you can have a next best action, the more you can push somebody along that journey and make that one touch point become many. So here we have this thing about scrambled eggs. Next best action is to then view a trailer about something that's relevant, which would be Gordon Ramsay. The next best action after that is maybe putting an email in. So you want to progressively push people along their journey and having organization, not just organization similar food stuff, but like what is the next best action? If I'm early in my journey, like consider awareness, my next best action might be email sign up. If it's something like consideration or conversion or consideration, it might be downloading a template. But neither would be buying right now. And then if it's the conversion part, then it is conversion. So I would have a different next best action depending on what content type it is. But yes, always push me along to the next thing.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. One question we had submitted from a registrant was, is it better to create new content for AI visibility or focus on updating the existing content? So I guess there's kind of two parts in that is how much does your existing content help or restrain your ability to rank that you've seen? And then where should we be focusing as marketers right now? New or optimization?
Yeah. So how I think about that is, does a landing page that's 3 years old perform? How well does it perform? I don't actually know that. What I will say is that in general, when for Google search, when stuff is several years old and we update it, it tends to perform better. And I have seen many examples where the curve goes up and then it sort of slowly degrades. I don't know the
Okay.
exact timeline. It's probably like 2 years. So for LLMs, I don't know what that curve looks like. It's probably the case though, because all of these are using similar search engines. So I think it does make sense to update things. And when we say update, we usually add a section, update the title tag, maybe add unique stuff. So I've seen cases where people are sort of just rewriting the same information over and over again arbitrarily. What I would suggest would be adding something net new, like adding something that has not been covered by somebody else, expert quote, unique metadata. Can you,
A
you
really
know,
long
can
tail question.
yeah, a really long tail question, looking at your customer support data and your sales data, like what is a question that hasn't been answered? That's how I think about updates.
Yeah, I think that's helpful. And it's interesting. I wish I had data on this. This is an action item for me is how of people that are using LLMs, how many of those searches have access to current live web data? Like how many people are still using the free 2024 data set from ChatGPT, in which case whatever you do right now is going to have no impact on how you show up for someone using that model that isn't pulling from a live website.
Yeah, anecdotally, or what I think that if they're not using the live, searching the web thing, what I think is probably happening is in many cases they're doing a search and they're caching it, and the freshness of the data is actually fairly recent. I'll give you
Okay.
an example. I created a post about AEO tools, and I was searching for what are the best AEO tools, and my article showed up like a day later, 2 days later. So anecdotally, I think that probably the data for everyone is pretty fresh.
Okay, that is good to know because I think that's been a question I've seen from people is what's the sense of urgency on updating things given what we've heard on which model you're using and how much access to relevant data it actually is pulling from.
Well, the models are probably pulling the model might be old, but it's not necessarily pulling from an old data set. Like the model is over here, the RAG response is over here. I don't know that the RAG response is different. I think that the models are different. So I think you could use an old
Mm,
model and still have fresh data.
fresh data. That is very helpful. One question is when you're thinking about creating, whether it's net new or optimizing content, actually using AI in the assistance of building that AI generated content, what role do you think that plays in SEO and is it different in AEO?
It's a very bad idea. I wouldn't do it. So there's human created, which is great. There's purely AI generated, which is bad, and I wouldn't do it at all. And then there's hybrid or AI assisted, which I think is a good idea. I think that everyone over time, almost all content is going to be AI assisted, but I wouldn't generate purely AI content. We can show you a study we did that will publish soon. So red is AI content, green is human content. And what you'll see is this is similar to the study I showed you before about the screen real estate, but we took a weighted random sample and looked at how much content was AI generated, and it's not that much in Google. So it's about 14%. And then we did the same thing in ChatGPT. It's about 18%. So it generally doesn't work. And we also did a correlation analysis where we looked at this and saw that the correlation clearly showed here. So to the left is human, and to the right is AI generated, and lower rank is better, green. And you'll see there's a very clear correlation. So I would
Okay.
generally strongly recommend against purely AI generated, but assisted hybrid at human edited, human in the loop. that's fine, or 100% human.
And what have you seen, like when you say AI assisted, is it just going in and looking for the things that now we're saying, oh, there's an M dash, all M dash. I mean, as someone who loves the M dash before ChatGPT made it a flag, there are certain words, there are certain sentence structures that now everyone kind of associates with AI. Is it just looking for those flags and massaging them out, or are there other things that you suggest, like if you're going to use AI as a human, here's what's the important piece that you're adding back into it?
Yeah. So your question is, are there? I think what you're saying is, can we do tiny little things to remove the watermark of AI, but not change much?
Well, I
Uh,
guess it's more of like I think of a spectrum. Like you could use AI to do 20% of the piece and you're still doing 80 or vice versa. Relying on 80% of it. Have you found a sweet spot in what that spectrum needs to look like if you are going to use a hybrid approach?
So this is essentially showing you that. And mixed AI is, I think it's like 10 to 40% AI, and mixed high is 50 to 90, and AI is 90%. So this is essentially showing you that sliding scale, and it's linear. So basically the less AI, the better. But what you could do, AI is great at giving you suggestions. So if you said,
Mm,
give me some ideas for how I might answer this, like help me with an outline, that's great. But if you're just straight using the AI content, it's not going to do well.
yeah. Well, and I think we've had conversations about this a lot of when to use AI. Do you use it to fill in the gaps of something you're weak at, or do you use it to automate your strengths so that you can really know if it's doing a good job or not, and then open your time up to do other things? And I think I tend to fall in the latter category of if you're not good at it to begin with, it's going to be hard for you to really make AI do it well and be able to trust it. And so look at ways for it to save you time so that you can really add in like the human superpower within, in this case, a great blog or a great social post or something like that.
So I think that AI is great at a first pass. It's great at summarization, like take these things and summarize it. And then it's great at idea generation.
Mm.
And here's an example. What are some non-obvious questions that a director of HR would have about payroll management software? And this is about prevent payroll fraud. And what is this? Manage user access control. So these are things that I would not have thought of. And if I'm an HR expert, I might know the answers to these, but I never thought that these would be asked. And I actually think that these are pretty good ideas. So I
Mhm.
would leverage AI to say, tell me, come up with new ideas that I haven't thought of, come up with a first pass, and then summarize things.
Well, this can be a great way if you're a small and lean team and you don't have time to go through hours of sales calls and customer support tickets, giving something a piece and saying, okay, if this is our persona, what is missing? What's a question someone would still have after this?
Yeah, that, and also it would be great at taking all your sales calls and summarizing it. So if you gave it thousands and thousands of sales calls and you said, please find the questions that have been asked the most, it would be great at that.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we are just at time, so I want to leave us with one question. If you guys have to jump, please do. Thank you so much for joining. We have one more session next week, so hopefully I will see you there. But to wrap us up, I am curious on how you're thinking about reporting and how to get a sense of what are people asking and kind of knowing if you are doing a good job in this. And so I know you guys have been working on a tool, just curious what your data is showing and how people should be thinking about that right now.
Okay, so for tracking, ultimately we want conversions. So we should track conversions. We can track conversions two different ways. The first way is, it's just last touch. Where did you come from and did you convert? So you can do that with any analytics tool like GA4 or whatever else. So that's one. Two is, how did you hear about us? Most of the impact is not going to be directly attributable with last touch, even with any channel really in B2B, because you need 50 touch points, 100 touch points. So definitely ask a how did you hear about us question. So that's conversions. Then there's traffic. So traffic, again, last touch visits, that would be one. And
Mhm.
that's any analytics tool. And then where did all the visits come from that you could not attribute? And for that, I would do answer tracking. So for answer tracking, it's kind of like keyword tracking where you take a set of questions and you say, did I show up? Yes, no. So there's many different tools that do that. We have one and we have a page with 60 different tools. So there's all these different tools and all these do AI tracking. So you could use any of these. I think that the one thing I would call out is that the majority of these are using the API to like the ChatGPT and the Perplexity API. And it's not necessarily consistent with what you actually see. And especially the citations are pretty different. So we are manually gathering, sometimes we are manually gathering question data, but the main thing I would assess here is how similar are the results for any of these tools with what you actually see. But after that, take a set of questions that you want to rank for and see if you're ranking. And that's what I would do. We have a tool. There's 60 others here.
No, that's super helpful. Well, Ethan, thank you so much for sharing insight. I love the graphs and all of the data that you can use because right now I think that's what everyone's looking for. And Ethan just dropped in the chat. I think I'll make sure it gets out to everyone. But I'll include some of these in the follow-up with the recording to today. But want to make sure that everyone kind of has access to these because I think there's just not a ton of data right now. So thank you for kind of leading the charge and giving us actual data-backed studies to see what's happening, what's not. I think we all have gut feels, but it's nice to know if some of those are actually valid through live experiments.
Indeed.
Um, I dropped Ethan's LinkedIn as well. I will drop it again. Please follow him, connect on LinkedIn as they do more studies and publish that. But Ethan, thank you again so much for joining. We really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, and I will see you next week as we wrap up our AI search webinar series.